Carried.
Good evening, everyone. We're here tonight to have a opportunity for folks to give verbal comment on the Trammell Crow Morgan Hill Technology Park EIR, draft EIR, I should say. I'd like to introduce our principal planner, Adam Paskowski. He will lead you through a quick briefing on where we are in the environmental review process and establish the rules for tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Great. Good evening. I'm Adam Paskowski with the principal planner with the City of Morgan Hill. So during this meeting tonight, I will give a brief introduction of the Trammell Crow Morgan Hill Technology and Residential Mixed Use EIR process. And then we will open up to the public for you guys to have an opportunity to verbally comment on the draft EIR. Please note that this meeting is not a discussion or evaluation of the project itself, but also an opportunity to submit comments on the draft EIR without writing a letter or email. So in here I listed the dates for when the draft EIR document was released. And I want to note that the city has extended the review period for the draft EIR when the EIR was initially released from the mandatory 45 days to 60 days. And that was directed by the Planning Commission. Comments on the project on the draft EIR are due on July 14th, and comments may continue to be submitted via the form on the website, by mail, or email up until that date. The city has provided tonight's meeting as an additional opportunity for the public to comment on draft EIR, and this meeting is not mandatory or required by CEQA or any other law. This is something additional that the city is doing. On the next slide, I have a flow chart of the EIR process, and as you can see, with the where the stars indicated, we are currently at the public review period for the draft EIR. And when the public review period ends, a final EIR will be prepared, which includes responses to all comments that are received. On the previous slide, I have a little bit more detail on this flow chart. So all comments that are submitted via mail, email, the website form, or tonight verbally will be responded to in the final EIR, as I mentioned in the previous slide. And the final EIR will also include any necessary revisions due to the comments received during that comment period. Once the final EIR is prepared, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing and make a recommendation to the City Council. And ultimately, the City Council will have final decision on the EIR as well as the project. So on the next slide, I have a little bit of procedures on how tonight's meeting will be run. A time limit will be established for each speaker based on the number of people attending tonight's meeting so that everyone has an opportunity to submit their comment. Looking at the number of people that we have in the participant list, we're going to be allotted 3 minutes per speaker, and everyone is allowed to speak only once, and no one will be able to donate any unused time to another speaker. If anyone has any additional comments after tonight, you can still continue to submit those comments in writing. As I mentioned in the previous slide, you can submit it by email, you can mail your comments to City Hall, or you can submit it via the form on the city's website. For tonight's meeting, to notify us that you want to speak tonight, please click on the raise hand icon on the Zoom application, or if you're calling in, press *9. And as a reminder, tonight's meeting is not a public hearing or a Q&A session. No responses from the city staff will be provided tonight. We're here to simply listen, take notes, and to transcribe your comments into writing to be responded to in the final EIR. With that, we'll start going through the list of speakers for tonight's meeting, and we will announce your name when it is your turn to speak.
We have Linda Gerthrell. Let me go ahead and start the timer. Let me share my screen here. Okay, Linda, go ahead.
Well, it's basically, I just wanted to make sure at the beginning there was no voice. I just wanted to make sure that everything was fine. So sorry, I'll raise my hand back down.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, we have Matthew K. Go ahead, Matthew K.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Great. So, hi, I'm a member of Morgan Hill. I had a couple concerns with this project. They're basically two. Number one is air quality. I think there's two parts to that. One, it's the location and proximity of problematic air pollution to sensitive receptors. It's like literally the perfect storm. Like all the sensitive receptor groups that are listed, like children under 16, elderly over 65, athletes, people with chronic respiratory cardiovascular. You literally have a high school, a senior care facility, and a medical complex all within the impacted area. I know the EIR called out that many of the students would be beyond the 1,000 feet from the site, but I don't think that accurately reflects outdoor things like sports practice, band practice, et cetera. So I think it's probably like one of the least desirable locations for a complex of this type, especially if we're considering allowing a rezoning. That's A. Part B, I think the pollutants that were called out and studied in the air quality study, that's great to see. Ozone, particulate matter 2.5, 10, carbon monoxide, NO. The problem I have with this is that there is a lot of local generation, but the closest Bay Area quality station we have is in San Jose, 19 miles away. I don't think that's a really good, accurate reflection of what the local air quality conditions are going to be like near Cochran Road with all that increased truck traffic, nor with the increased congestion on 101 these days. So I would ask the City Council to consider, or the study, the EIR to consider, realistically, is that the best way to measure what we would expect as a community in terms of air quality for the people in the project? And then finally, the last one, and I'd like to acknowledge on that point as well, I know that there are no other air quality monitoring stations, basically. It's San Jose is the big one. There's a couple in Gilroy. There's like one thing at San Martin, but we really don't have a good South Bay local air quality station. So it feels really risky for us to make a huge judgment about the air quality using something that's, 20 miles away, decided probably 10 years ago. So I'd love for us to reconsider that. And then finally, there's some comment about the impact of this project and others. I'd just like to raise the fact that I'm worried that warehousing and distribution in some of those cases, they beget more of the same. So warehousing begets warehousing. And I'm really nervous if this project, following on with the Shoe Palace project, I could easily see an explosion of these types of projects in the city where each one individually doesn't look like a big deal, but before you know it, we're a big stop on the highway for all kinds of tractor trailer traffic, and we've kind of destroyed the air quality and quality of life for the people that live here. So I think we should really consider what kind of infrastructure is going to go in place for these kinds of projects and what the likelihood is we'll see more of these in the future if we improve these. Thank you.
John Williams. John Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So the draft EIR for this proposed Trammell Crow project estimates that there will be about 248 truck trips and over 10,000 total vehicle trips to the site in a 24-hour period. And this is really the basis of the entire EIR and its findings. And it seems to be far from the worst case scenario that we were promised months ago, and is most likely fairly dramatically understated. And the reason I say that is because the 248 number is only two truck turns per dock in a 24-hour day. And that's not likely for a distribution center. Industry studies that I've been looking into suggest that 53-foot semis can be loaded in 10 to 12 minutes with state-of-the-art automation equipment. So a worst case would look more like 2 to 3 turns per hour, or 7,000 to over 10,000 truck trips per day, which is really a long way from 248. So that's concern one. According to the EIR, even at the 248 trip volume, the traffic impact on 10 segments of Highway 101 are significant and unavoidable in the AM and PM commute hours, with no remediation available, none. Okay, so this fact itself should be more than enough for the city to reject the project application outright. Yet this is obviously not the case. If this isn't bad enough, the traffic impact to the Shoe Palace project, which has 56 dock doors currently under construction, has not been comprehended whatsoever in this analysis or any other analysis that I've ever heard of. So I think that the EIR traffic study is grossly incomplete, and is doing the citizens of Morgan Hill a huge disservice because we'll have to live with the traffic and air quality disaster forever that will result if this project is approved and built. People going north in the morning won't be able to get to work or get home at night without facing debilitating gridlock worse than we have now. 101 likely will be rendered useless, and our small town, quality of life will be destroyed. I'm running out of time here. I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. Number one, I'm wondering how the daily truck trip is defined. Is the truck going in and out considered 1 or 2 trips? Second question is, how will the number of actual truck trips to the site be measured to ensure that the forecasted numbers are not exceeded? Will Trammell Crow be required to install technology to measure and regularly report the number of daily truck trips? If the number of truck and total vehicle trips exceeds the number stated in EAR, what is the required action to be taken by the city and Trammell Crow? Also, will there be any on-site air quality to be monitored over time to ensure that these toxic greenhouse gas emissions don't exceed the levels that we've been promised they won't, especially if the truck trips are higher than projections? I know I'm out of time. I have a quick question here, I'm done. Does the city have a process and the budget dollars to enforce these trip numbers? And I'm also curious why we're not looking at this on a cumulative basis where we take into consideration the impact of the traffic of Trammell Crow and the Shoe Palace projects together to look at the real impact of traffic in the city at the highway. That's it. Thank you.
Let's see. I'm having trouble highlighting the next speaker. Hold on one moment for me.
Jenna, right now you have Swanee Edwards and she's unmuted and ready to go.
Okay, Swanee Edwards, go ahead. Swanee Edwards, are you there?
She may be having some mic issues. I think this occasionally happens. What you can do is you can go ahead and mute her and call the next speaker and give Swanee a moment to see if she can get her mic working.
Okay. Okay, Marissa Jean, it says I can't get her to, it wants me to promote her as to a panelist when I allow to talk.
Okay, Marissa, you're running an old version of Zoom and it's not going to allow us to unmute you. You can submit your comments via email to adam.peskowski@morganhill.ca.gov, or alternatively, you can step out of the meeting, briefly update your Zoom and jump back in and then speak. Jenna, you can move to the next speaker.
Okay, we have Rick Kent.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, this is Rick Kent. I'm Chief Financial Officer of Paramount Corporation, one of the largest employers here in Morgan Hill, and President of the Mission Ranch Homeowners Association, which represents 320 homes significantly impacted by this project. Additionally, I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce and an active member of the Morgan Hill Community Advisory Group, and I have lived in Morgan Hill for 24 years. This project as currently designed should not get approved. There are many significant and unavoidable impacts. These include air quality and traffic, and the project is within hundreds of feet of Live Oak High School, Westmont Assisted Living Facility, DePaul Medical Facility, and my neighborhood. The draft EIR has an unrealistically low number of truck trips per day and gets nowhere close to the worst case scenario of a fully functional distribution center. I find it hard to fathom that our city staff, City Planning Commission, and City Council would even consider such a project. Paramount is an advanced manufacturing facility which manufactures medical devices and life science instrumentation. We are in a building that's 150,000 square feet, and we have 4 docks. That's 1 dock for every 37,500 square feet. The Trammell Crow project is over 1 million square feet, double the size of the Shoe Palace directly across 101. This project calls for 124 docks, or 1 dock for every 8,000 square feet. The gateway to Morgan Hill will be distribution centers on both sides of the freeway. Welcome to Morgan Hill. You think we have traffic issues today? Just wait. Part of the mitigation plan includes 5 additional stoplights. However, a number of these intersections are on county property, so there's no guarantee that they will be installed. I request that the project become significantly less dense. 1 million square feet is too much for 60 acres. I request that the number of docks be cut down to 40 at a maximum. I request that the project attempt to provide some mitigation for employees leaving the facility at lunchtime by providing on-site eating and recreational facilities. Thank you, staff, City Planning Commission, City Council, Trammell Crow, for what I'm afraid is going to force me out of this city after 24 years. Thank you.
We have John Lukes.
Yes. Hi, hopefully you can hear me correctly. This is John Lucas speaking. I live in the area of this project. After reviewing the draft EIR, there's 3 significant areas of impact that significantly have concerns on. Number 1 is traffic. Number 2 is air quality. And number 3 is sound quality. On traffic, one of the mitigations proposed, which is TRN C1.3, is to add a traffic light at Avenida de los Padres and Mission View. Today, that's just a nice quiet intersection that's going to turn into a very noisy intersection impacting homeowners directly along Mission View Avenue there. Secondly, on traffic is TRN C1.5, talking about improving the traffic light at Main Avenue and Condit Roads, which already has a traffic light today. Again, that's county property. I think that was echoed by the earlier caller, and there's no agreement with Santa Clara County that will even get implemented. There's additional traffic lights proposed in C1.6. So adding all these traffic lights, it's hard to believe that the level of service, LOS, is going to be improved in terms of traffic. One thing not even in the EIR would be improvements to the Cochran Road interchange. Either the northbound 101 exits or the southbound 101 exits already are congested today. There's no discussion in the EIR about how those interchanges would be improved to serve this project, which I think would be a must. And of course, the impact on the segments of Highway 101, again mentioned by an earlier caller, are noted being beyond the economic scope of this development project. 101 will be negatively impacted. I've been living here since 2004, and we all know the southbound 101 commute in the afternoon has deteriorated significantly over the last 15 or so years. Then there's noise pollution. So MMNOI 1.3 talks about a sound wall along DePaul Drive. How that will get implemented, I don't know. Another point talks about using a truck interchange off of directly off of Cochran Road and going along the highway. That may help with noise in one direction of trucks, but what about when trucks leave the facility? They'll have to either take DePaul Drive or Mission View Drive. And so I don't understand how that's going to mitigate any noise issues. So in short, and then finally, there's air quality. What's unclear from the EIR, let alone the number of truck trips, is how did they look at, for example, Class 8 semi-trucks, which are heavy diesel polluting vehicles, versus delivery trucks, which are maybe somewhat less polluting, but still polluting. There was no distinction of what the volume of delivery trucks would be versus Class 8 semi-trucks. So a number of concerns, and that's what I've listed as well as put in writing to this committee. Thank you.
Okay, Swanee Edwards, are you able to speak? Okay, let's, Georgia Tassos. Let's see.
Georgia, your audio doesn't seem to be connected. You may need to jump out of the meeting and reconnect and make sure that you connect your audio because it's not giving us a way to allow you to unmute. And then Swanee, we're going to give it one more try and see if you're able to unmute. Oh. Georgia, do you want to try to unmute? I can see your mic now. Okay, Jenna, let's give them a moment and move on to the next speaker.
Okay, we have caller 782-107, 782-1017.
That's me.
Hi, how are you? Go ahead.
Hi,
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. There's a bit of an echo though.
Okay, let me turn off my computer feed. Or I'll move to another room. These meetings can be really complicated. How is that? Have I lost the echo?
Much better, thank you.
Very good. I would like to comment. I left a long written comment on the website, but I would like to comment on a couple of things in response to what I've been hearing from residents. Number one, back when Calpine Energy was building their energy center in Coyote, we were promised an air quality monitoring station by the city of San Jose in exchange for a favorable vote from the city of Morgan Hill. Now, this was almost 10 years ago. The problem is the best place to place it was off of Monterey Road on Morgan Hill Unified School District property. At the time, Kathy Sullivan was one of our trustees. They wanted to see the footprint and get the technical information on this station before the school district would commit to allow that station to be built on the property. It's still in San Jose somewhere, and I've tried to call attention to this with previous city councils. John Laird was involved when he was our assemblyman. So there is an air quality monitoring station somewhere in San Jose that belongs in South County for Morgan Hill air quality monitoring. The second thing I'd like to bring up is the fact that the governor just mandated that we have electric trucks by the year 2024 in the state of California. So there are technical progressions, to make these less polluting. And the third thing I would like to say is that I think the city of Morgan Hill and its residents have proved in the past that we can sit down and try to mitigate problems and issues. This would provide like over 1,000 Morgan Hill City jobs. People who live here would work here. This has been an economic development agency goal for the city of Morgan Hill for well over 10 years, I believe. It began when Edith Ramirez joined our staff. So, I would like to see this happen, but I would also like to see us sit down and mitigate the issues for the residents over there. I mean, I understand their fears, and I really think we need to look into finding this air quality monitoring station that we were promised and try to work something out so we can get that installed. And that's about all I have to say. I do support the project with certain conditions. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for that. I just would like to make a reminder, if you are calling in, you can dial *9 to raise your hand if you wish to speak. Okay, we have Marissa Jean.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I just wanted to say that, first of all, I agree with the sentiments that the other residents have been putting forth, that as it stands right now, I do not personally believe that our town could support this kind of development. And that's not saying that I don't believe that our town could support these kinds of developments in the future. But as of right now, just want to talk about our infrastructure a little bit. I don't believe that our streets, for example, could support the truck output. I mean, every year when it rains, at least one street completely floods, and we've been dealing with that for the past 10 years. Streets like the area of Live Oak is a lot of 2-lane, if not 1-lane streets. And even on 101, I'm a resident of Morgan Hill, but I'm also a student, and I go to school in San Jose. And leaving at 7 o'clock in the morning, it takes me over an hour to drive 20 miles. And that's just with the current traffic. So I don't believe that our infrastructure and our roads could support this kind of output and these additional trucks on the road. And then in response to the air quality, I also don't believe that everything about Morgan Hill is being taken into consideration. In addition to what one caller said about it being so close to the high school and that there's kids out there doing football and marching band and breathing this in, Morgan Hill is also at base an agricultural town. I know that Andy's Orchard is right there, and there's a lot of other agricultural areas that I believe would be impacted negatively from the additional exhaust and pollution in the air. So overall, I just think that if Morgan Hill wants to put these kinds of projects in our town, then they need to spend some time and some money on the roads and on updating the town and getting the town ready for the expansion into these kinds of projects. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Georgia Tassos. Georgia, if you're there, you have to unmute.
Georgia, alternatively, you can call in from your phone. The phone number is posted on our website and has gone out in a few other places. It's also on our Facebook page. So if you're having trouble with your audio through the Zoom app or your computer, you can call in as well.
Okay, there are no more raised hands. Let's see if we have a few more here. Terry, go ahead, Terry.
Very good. I understand that the economy of Morgan Hill is really in the dumps, and I haven't seen any figures on what Morgan Hill is anticipating as far as the monies that will be coming into the coffers from this project. And if that isn't available, I don't understand why it wouldn't be if there was an economic report done. The other thing that I'm wondering about is, did the EIR include all of the new traffic that's going to be coming in from all the houses that are being built on Cochran Road? And not only Cochran Road, but on the Mission View, and what will happen if the area Cochran Center is going to be built up, all of that traffic. It seems like they've overlooked the traffic that has came in from the Shoe Palace. And I am wondering if there was if all of my questions will be answered, and if there is someone who's going to be answering them? Who is going to vet the questions? My understanding is what'll happen is that you'll take 10 or 12 questions, depending on how many there are, and you will condense them into one question to keep the answers from getting too many answers. And I would like to see all answers be answered, or all questions be answered, pardon me. The idea of having anybody monitor, we don't have a department to monitor any kind of violation of an EIR. As far as I know, no one has cited anybody for an EIR, and there isn't anybody who would cite for an EIR. And I do not understand how this large and this harmful project can continue to go on. And if the city council and the planning commission and all of you folks who work in the city have any power at all to stop this, or to change it into 2 or 3 buildings and make a park out of the rest of the area, that would be good for our community. Thank you.
Next, we have Steve Malik.
Thank you for taking my call. Farmlands turned into houses. Probably some of the houses that you're living in now used to be beautiful farmland. Now, that being said, I would like to see this land undeveloped, but I do also believe that the developer has a right to develop. You know, they purchased the property knowing that it had some type of commercial zoning or different types of commercial zones, and they should be able to develop per the city guidelines that say how property should be developed. That certain percentages of the property can be built either as industrial or commercial buildings. What I'm hearing from a lot of opponents is objections that are contradictory. Like they want to have, development that creates more jobs, but they don't want a lot of traffic. Those ideas are contradictory. And when I talked with one of those opponents, they said, well, maybe somebody can just bike to work. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I agree with the previous caller that a few callers ago that said we should sit down with the developer and figure out what's going to make sense for them and make sense for the city. And these comments about it shouldn't be developed at all, that seems to me like a disaster for future developments of every kind. You know? So that's primarily my message is I'd like to see the city try to come up with, and its residents come up with constructive ways to move forward on this. That's it.
Thank you, Steve. We have next Hussein Ali.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. First, I am an opponent of this project. Just make it clear. I do agree with a lot of comment especially regarding the traffic. There is only one thing I really like to know, and maybe the city can help us, is how much money I'm gonna be losing on my property if you guys go ahead and destroy the traffic along Cochran Road. Am I gonna be losing 20% of my property, 30% of my property? Some people say they have the option to move out. I don't have the option to move out. So mainly you are taking money from me. Who's gonna pay my money? This is my comment, and I'd like to get an answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Joe Baranowski.
Good morning or afternoon, good evening. I haven't heard a lot of questions, so I'm going to ask some. I hope they will be included. And even though I have a lot of written comments, these won't be there. So my first question is, does the city recognize that the purpose of CEQA is to encourage public participation in environmental review and decision-making process? My second question is, does the city recognize that CEQA should ensure transparency? My third question is, does the city recognize that without promoting transparency and public confidence, this process will be considered a sham? If the answer to those questions is yes, my next question is, why would you completely ignore the requests, the most vulnerable citizens to the current health pandemic situation, who are also the most impacted by this project, being 300 feet away? When the draft EIR was released shortly thereafter, residents wrote a respectful letter requesting additional time for this review period. The city manager used the excuse that the city is following recent guidance for the continuity of business developed by the governor's office. And she referenced a recent ruling that he made as far as procedures go. That in itself was completely misleading. The governor's order had absolutely nothing to do with the time requirements for draft EIR. The actual requirement is that the public review period for draft EIR shall not be less than 30 days, nor shall it be longer than 60 days, except in unusual circumstances. So that's my next question. Does the city recognize that as an official CEQA rule? That is maximum is 60 days except in unusual circumstances. And if so, and you expect this process to be fair and to promote public confidence, then you please explain to me how COVID-19 is not an unusual circumstance when other cities, such as Palo Alto, as recently as 2018, at the request of citizens, extended the draft EIR by another 60 days because it was complex. You have lost all credibility with the very purpose that CEQA is intended to provide, which is transparency and public confidence. I would like to understand a direct answer to my question. How is COVID-19 not considered in unusual circumstances by the city government of Morgan Hill? Thank you.
Craig?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, go ahead.
One question that's been bothering me for the entire project is it's considered a technology center, but I don't see what the technology that's being centered there is. Is it going to be a data processing center or a scientific research park? What is the technology that's driving this technology center? Or is it just a big warehouse with a bunch of truck bays? So I'd like to see that answered. I've never seen an answer to that yet. And that's my main concern.
Thank you. We have next Sheila Reyes Ortiz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, we moved to Morgan Hill 16 years ago following our in-laws. And what we were told was Morgan Hill would be like a Los Gatos or a Saratoga. We built up the downtown. We were going in that direction. We've become a warehouse distribution center. This is 2 of 3 sites. There is a third proposed off Butterfield. That is very common knowledge now if people have kept up on the news. But the one aesthetic issue that no one has raised What's it going to look like when you come down the hill from the golf course and you see walls that will be full of graffiti and will look very unsightly to anyone coming through the city? Who's going to pay for removing all the graffiti that's going to happen? Shoe Palace is nicely painted, looks beautiful today. Let's give it a couple of weeks. Let's see how that's going to play out. What's going to happen there? This is just one of many things. I've agreed with everything that's been said on this call. Who has really been considering what is Morgan Hill? What's our brand as a city? We're selling out. We're selling out because we have a deficit. I understand that. It's a business. But is that really what we want for the city? My kids graduated from Live Oak. There is a senior center down the street from where this will be built. Do we really want our children and our elderly to be facing this situation? I'm very, very disappointed. I can tell you today, we will not be retiring in this town if more of these distribution centers go through. And let's look at Trammell Crow. One more item, do your research. Look at what happened in Livermore. All of the touting that this is the best thing for their city certainly did not pay off. So I implore you, please, City Council, I know you have the final decision in this. Please don't sell out. There is another way. I understand that you want to drive business, you want to bring in tax revenue, you want to bring in jobs, but this is not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a caller, last four digits, 1991. Go ahead.
Hi. All right, that's me, Georgia, finally. I finally called in because Zoom sucks. Anyway, so, you know, we keep being told that if this is approved, this will bring 1,500 jobs to Morgan Hill. But I've always wondered, what kind of jobs is it going to bring? Because we're not going to get, you know, Facebook with 180 grand salary or Apple with 180 grand salary, especially now with COVID forcing everyone to work from home. All these, even if all these places like Facebook, Apple, whichever ones you can think of, Netflix, etc., who have these massive offices and these massive campuses, and they go back there, no one's going to want to come to Morgan Hill. Facebook's not going to bring an office to Morgan Hill in our quote unquote technology center. So I would like to know what kind of jobs would be brought in, these 1,500 jobs, and what the pay level would be for these jobs that are so enticing to the residents of Morgan Hill. Because it'd be really interesting to know if, you know, it's going to be something that's, you know, $15 an hour, or something that's more along the lines of $40, $50, $60, $80 an hour, like the salaries that people are used to in this area to provide them a comfortable living. Because clearly, you know, we can't live off of $15 an hour here in Morgan Hill. Nowhere in the Bay Area can live off of $15 an hour. I barely can live off the salary that I make, and I make a very comfortable salary. My husband and I, we have a 2-income home, and we need that 2-income home, and we make a fair amount of money to have a nice life here. But if I made $15 an hour, I wouldn't be able to live in Morgan Hill with my husband. It's very possible that we wouldn't be able to. So that's what I would like to know. The other things that hopefully I have time for are the alternative options. The alternative options are almost worse. And the only way that it seems like, based on these alternative options, that this would be beneficial for us is if the scale of the project is reduced by 70%, according to the EIR. So it's really interesting that in order for our lives to remain essentially the same with regard to quality of life, air, traffic, etc., this project has to be significantly reduced. So that's my commentary for this. What kind of jobs does Trammell Crow think they'll bring to us? Are they going to be jobs that can sustain a basic income, basic lifestyle in Morgan Hill that keeps up with housing prices and things like that? And like to point out that the only other option that seems feasible with regard to this project proceeding is something reduced at 70%. I'd like to shout out to all the people who in our government, our planning commission, our developmental manager, etc., all you who don't seem to care about your citizens and just want to pad your pockets with whatever money you're getting from all these people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sam Cole.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sam Cole and I live in Mission Ranch. My concern echoes what many of my neighbors have already said: increased traffic and pollution for my community and young family. The EIR didn't mention the new elementary school being built on P Road, in between Mission Ranch and Alicante communities. This means that we'll have new traffic from the Shoe Palace, an additional school on our doorstep, and now the Trammell Crow project. Secondly, the EIR didn't touch the impact on these young lungs that will be breathing in the toxic pollution in this new elementary school, the Borello School. I call for the outdated data used to be updated to provide a real analysis of the impact to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jennifer.
Hello, I'm Jennifer's husband. We're speaking as a couple. Is that all right?
Great. Yes. Go
My
ahead.
name's Russell. Our question is, we understand some of what you want to achieve with this plan of yours requires changes to the general plan. And so what parts of it require, and that requires voter approval. And so what parts of it require changes to the general plan and what parts can be done without voter approval, not requiring changes to the city plan? That's one question. And the other overarching question, which is maybe not so easily answered directly, is why is there this disconnect between what the citizens need and what the city wants? It's like the city has this goal, which I understand is financial stability, and the citizens have the goal of a nice place to live, and there's a disconnect. And I wonder what you're going to do to address that and to balance financial stability against livability. Those are my two questions, two-part questions. I get the one about the general plan has apparently two answers: what you can do with the general plan and what requires changes and therefore voter approval. That's all. I understand, for example, that some people who work for the city do not live in the city. So their disconnect is even greater. They don't really care what happens to us. And that's not their top priority. It's more, what's going across their desk. That wasn't really a question, I suppose, but I would like to know how we're going to balance the main goal of the city, which is stated as financial stability, against the goal of the citizens of the city, which is livability. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Linda Nolan.
All right.
Okay. All right. I'm unmuted.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. I've been a very happy resident of Morgan Hill since 1991. And until last year, I've actually appreciated how our lovely city has evolved. I attended that May 2019 community meeting during the EIR scoping period for this project. And we were told at that meeting that the environmental impact report would address our concerns because environmental studies would be based on worst case analysis. So fast forward to this May 2020, when we actually see the draft EIR, and my thoughts are with the other speakers on this. Assumptions used for the worst case analysis, including 248 truck trips per day for 124 loading docks, are far from realistic if this becomes a fully functioning distribution center. Nevertheless, there are already significant and unavoidable impacts related to air quality outlined in this report. And recently, I've learned that Trammell Crow is prepared to mitigate these air quality issues. And I tried to figure out how they could do that related to air quality. And what I've learned is that they would most likely be purchasing carbon offset credits. So does that mean their potential distribution center and trucking activities are allowed to contaminate our Morgan Hill airspace as long as they pay the regulatory agencies to offset that pollution? So Morgan Hill City Planning Division, on your web page, you state that you perform a variety of services intended to protect, maintain, and develop an attractive, safe, and healthy environment. How is this protecting the healthy environment for our Live Oak kids, or our future students at the New Borello School, or the thousands of residents living in that area of the city? We need to reject this proposal and ask Trammell Crow for something that is a better fit and healthier solution for our community. But if decision makers believe it's easier and more financially beneficial to move forward, despite these significant and unavoidable impacts, this is what I need to ask you. If City of Morgan Hill is having financial struggles today, how are we going to balance the books if we end up having a steady stream of lawsuits filed by residents endangered by this project? I'm not making this up. Just ask the City of San Bernardino, Fresno, and other cities facing litigation today due to the high rate of cancer and other detrimental health effects of distribution centers in those cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Matt.
Hi, my name is Matthew Smith. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I've been a part of Morgan Hill community since 1980. I live about as close as humanly possible to this development. And I'm really kind of curious, the ones that are pushing forward, how close they actually live to the development. My issue with the project is twofold. One, buildings are built, and then we worry about the long-term effects after. Case in point, Shoe Palace. When the studies were done for the EIR back then, which a lot of residents in town didn't see, it wasn't brought to the attention of what the sound effects would be on the local communities. At first, I thought the road behind my house, kids were just speeding like usual, or adults were speeding like usual. And now I'm realizing the freeway is basically in my bedroom now that the building is built. The other thing that I'm really curious about is just safety. We're looking at a company to come in and build these buildings, but we have no idea what's going to go in there. The idea is, let's bring jobs to Morgan Hill. But it would make a lot more sense if we knew who and what was going in there, because if it is R&D and manufacturing, what about the hazardous materials that'll be coming into town? What about the chemicals? Where are they going to be stored? How are they going to be brought in? All those points would need to be addressed after the buildings are already here next door. My kids cannot walk safely to school. The city has been known to put the cart before the horse. The housing was built right next to Live Oak. There's not a housing community around Live Oak in Mission Ranch and Borello where you can walk safely to the school. The traffic is worse, and the fire departments, police departments are maxed out. Anybody who's in those fields in town, I totally feel for you, because they are doing the best they can with the resources they have. All these business parks end up being drag strips at night. There ends up being break-ins. We need more patrols. One of the Amazon facilities, warehouses caught fire, and all that stuff is generally built outside of the housing communities. So my question is this: how is the city going to keep the residents safe when we already can't even walk to school safely with our children? So I thank you for your time, and I just want that to be kept in mind as this moves forward. I understand things are going to get built, but find out who wants to come to town and what they want to bring to town before we build it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any more hands raised, but if you'd like to speak, go ahead and select *9 or raise your hand. We have Miguel Jimenez. Oh, Miguel, it says you're using an older version of Zoom. You can always use your phone to call in. Let's see here.
Miguel, you can also jump out of this meeting, update your Zoom, and jump back in, and then raise your hand. And we'll move on to the next speaker in the meantime.
Okay, we have Sean Voss. Sean, if you want to go ahead and unmute your mic.
Thank you. Thank you. The Zoom cleared that too fast. So it seems like for all the residents and everybody in Morgan Hill that spoke out against this, it feels like this feeling of futility. The moderators that are on haven't emoted whatsoever. They're staring, not looking into the cameras, just kind of expecting the public to go away. And, you know, probably a big reason for that is that there isn't anybody announced to run against any of the council members of the mayor. And that's what you need to coalesce around right now. You need to realize that the seat of power is within the city council and in the mayorship. Mayor's elected for only 2 years. In November, he's up for re-election. You have Councilman Carr, who also has not helped this city whatsoever in mitigating any of this stuff. You know, it's interesting. The mayor has a 10-point plan or something like that that says he's going to do responsible growth. Where is the actual votes for this type of thing? We have this Lillian Commons thing coming out. We need to coalesce on a candidate who is going to oppose this. And District A is going to be the easiest to flip. So look together, to bond together, to find the different groups that oppose this sort of growth and figure out a way to flip that seat. And also, maybe the mayor himself. You know, that is the only way that this is going to be stopped, and other projects like this are just going to keep happening. And, you know, if it just because this one affects you, you're thinking, we're going to stop this by commenting, but look at the city's response. They aren't interested in it because they are going to do what they are going to do. They're a machine. They're like a corporation. And so you have to look at it from their perspective. What actually would scare them? And scare them would be a united opposition against a candidate who could actually change this. It's pretty much 3-2. If you looked at the recent Hill Avenue extension, Councilman McKay, who represented your district, voted for the Hill Avenue extension. So he's just going to vote for this too, because he doesn't care about responsible growth, along with the mayor and along with Councilman Carr. Dissenting were the remaining 2 council members, one of which was up for election. I'd advise you to go for him. Point being, that is a way that we are going to affect change because the current city administration does not care. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff L. Jeff, it looks like you're also running an older version of Zoom. If you want to hop off and then jump back in, or you can use your phone to call in. We'll go to Miguel Jimenez.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. My questions and concerns relate to the process and criteria the Morgan Hill Development Department used to select David J. Powers and Associates to complete the environmental impact report for the proposed Trammell Crow development. Ideally, the organization that completes the environmental impact analysis and report for this project would be a nonpartisan and focus on adhering to the California Environmental Quality Act, which, according to the California Public Resource Code, is California's broadest environmental law. Now, David J. Powers and Associates is the same company that completed the initial study and mitigated negative declaration for the 500,000 square foot Shoe Palace expansion. The traffic analysis for the Shoe Palace expansion assumed an increase of 3 truck trips per day. And I quote from the Shoe Palace initial study: the new facility would increase truck deliveries from 5 to 8 per day. Now, an increase of 3 truck trips per day when the dock count from the Shoe Palace site goes from 4 to 56, to me seems grossly negligent. In addition, the Morgan Hill Development Department received a letter about the Shoe Palace expansion initial study from a law firm representing the Laborers International Union of North America, dated November 19, 2018, that stated, and I quote, "With the assistance of expert traffic engineer Daniel Smith Jr. and environmental consulting firm SWAPE, we identified a number of significant omissions and flaws in the initial study analysis of likely traffic, air quality, and greenhouse gas impact. In addition, the initial study discussion of wildlife impacts is inadequate as a matter of law. The letter from the law firm goes on to identify a number of issues with the initial study and MND of the Shoe Palace expansion completed by David J. Powers and Associates. Now, the purpose of CEQA, and I'll highlight a few, disclose to the public the significant environmental effects, disclose to the public the agency decision-making process utilized to approve discretionary projects, enhance public participation in the environmental review process. However, in a communication to the Morgan Hill Development Department obtained via public records request, in July of 2018, David J. Powers and Associates wrote, "Please find our revised scope of work. The schedule has been reduced by 9 weeks from the initial version by simplifying the traffic analysis." It further states, "We investigated the possibility of preparing an addendum which would avoid the need altogether for a public review period, and we should discuss this option by phone. I want the Morgan Hill Development Department to explain the criteria used to select David J. Powers and Associates to complete the Trammell Crow development analysis, especially in light of concern raised about their work on the Shoe Palace expansion." Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and try Jeff L. Okay, it's Jeff, if you want to log off and then log back in, or you can use your phone to call us and dial *9. Okay, let's move on to last 4 digits of caller, let's see, 9596. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Jeff L. Sorry, I'm on my phone now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you allowing me to take the time to speak. Just a couple things. So my family moved to Morgan Hill from South San Jose in 2017. Both my 4-year-old son and myself at the time were both recovering from cancer. We incidentally had it at the same time, different types of cancer, but our reasoning for moving to Morgan Hill was kind of multifold, if you will. It was a new start for us. And, you know, we had looked at Morgan Hill as somewhere to relocate in the past and decided not to because of the traffic. And we figured that at the time that all this was going on, we decided to take the leap and move down here and start over. And, you know, it was that there was a few reasons for doing that. Number one, I looked before we even considered down here to see if we were going to be around anything significant with respect to air pollution or any like ground pollution, groundwater pollution or anything like that, as well as just the community itself. You know, I grew up in North Valley, San Jose, and I wanted to bring my family back to kind of what I grew up in. So with all that said, you know, Morgan Hill is a wonderful community, and in the short amount of time that we have lived here, you know, I commute into Cupertino every day. I've watched the traffic almost double. I mean, I can say that with pretty much certainty that it's just about doubled. And looking at the EIR and the fact that the traffic study that was done was from 2017 numbers when we first moved here, I think it's grossly understated the amount of traffic impact that we're going to see from this. And then on top of that, like everybody else has said, or most people are, you know, commenting on, the pollution. You're talking the air pollution, which, you know, again, the reasoning for bringing myself, my son, my family down here was to be in a healthier environment. And while I understand that growth is, you know, it's going to happen, which is great for the community, responsible growth, as other people have said, is what is key here. And I know that with my son, who has got a compromised immune system and will for his entire life, being in an environment where we're going to be around, you know, a heightened level of pollution is not going to be sustainable for us. So that would be having my kid pulled out of school to do homeschooling or us moving if, in fact, we start seeing things go out of control. So the things that I, again, haven't heard, a lot of people have said the same thing too, is just the responsible growth. While I understand and totally I agree with building the appropriate things, the right things for this community, an actual technology park versus a trucking center or whatever it becomes, where we're going to be bringing high quality jobs to Morgan Hill with, you know, not 500, 1,000 truck trips a day or whatever it is, makes sense. I'd like us to sit back and look at this and really take a broader look at what makes sense for this community based on what the feedback has been from the community itself, and not just the money coming in from Trammell Crow and whatever tax dollars we're going to get from this. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands, but if you'd like to speak, you may do so. And also, if you're calling in, go ahead and hit *9. Okay, looks like we have Catherine Rossi. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Great, I'm speaking for Catherine. She's sitting here with me, I'm her husband. And I've been to the meetings, read the information, have lived in a large city before, moved to Morgan Hill 16 years ago for a very specific reason, and that was to be part of a community, not to be part of Fremont, not to be part of Livermore, not to live in Oakland. It is unconscionable to me. While it's great we're having this conversation, it is absolutely unconscionable that the people of the city are even considering a project of this magnitude and not considering what's best for the citizens of Morgan Hill. It's very simple. If this is about money and revenue, what is the right revenue model? What is the city looking for? What is the end game that you expect to get out of this? How much revenue are we talking about? Not to you personally, or not whatever else monkey business certainly must be going on, but what will this really bring to the city of Morgan Hill? Somebody earlier had indicated jobs. What type of paying jobs are those? I assure you they are not going to be technology jobs as they mentioned, and not to belabor their point, but you're not going to be getting people down here making $150,000 to $200,000 a year working in one of these centers. And if you do, it's one or two people that are at the top, and they don't live here. We live here. The amount of pollution that you're bringing in, no one has even started thinking or raised the issue. We have a dam project that's going to start here sometime in the next 2 years that's going to go on for 5 to 7 years. And the amount of truck traffic and pollution is going to be brought in here just for that alone is, no one's even mentioned what that is. And that's a project that has been delayed and delayed and delayed for the obvious reasons. But when you look at going to the meeting and having people say, oh, we're going to hire 3 more police officers. We need 30 more police officers. And you know what? If we don't have the roads that we can travel on, how are the police officers going to get anywhere to do their job? The pollution, the traffic is not worth the revenue. It's an old adage. The juice is not worth the squeeze, people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And there are no more speakers right now. Okay, we have Jennifer. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I have a question. I've been listening to people's comments, and they haven't always manifested as questions. So how does the city address something where there are implied questions as opposed to direct questions regarding the draft EIR? I would hate for things to get lost. So that is basically my question. I want to make sure that when I read the city's response, all of the implied questions and not just the direct questions have been answered. So my question to you right now is, how are you going to interpret the comments that have been made? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. If anyone wishes to speak, go ahead and raise your hand, or for the callers, go ahead and hit *9. Okay, Jennifer and Adam, I don't see any more raised hands.
Okay. So with not seeing any more raised hands or anyone on the phone looking to submit their verbal comments on the draft EIR, we're going to end this meeting. And just as a reminder, we're going to incorporate these comments into the final EIR. And for comments that were addressed in the final EIR will be responded to in that document. I do see one more hand from
Georgia. Well,
Jenna, if you can.
It looks like it disappeared. Let me see, Georgia. Let's see here. Okay, I don't see Georgia's hand raised anymore.
Okay.
So Adam, if you can pull up the slide presentation again with the email addresses,
sure.
Just for the purposes of everyone being able to see them.
So just as a reminder, there's time until July 14th to submit comments. If you submit comments through the website, you can use the form that's on this website. You can also mail your comments directly to me at City Hall or also by email. And I'll just leave this up for a minute to allow anyone to copy down the address or the email address. And then I think after that, thank you everyone for submitting your comments.
We appreciate everyone taking their time tonight to check in, and those who spoke. We will ensure that we've been taking notes. That's why we're not looking at the screen, making sure that we're getting as much information. And this meeting is also being recorded, and the recording will be translated to the consultant for inclusion within the response to comments portion of the final EIR.
Oh, it looks like we do have a speaker. John Williams.
Sorry about that, I was muted. I don't have any more comments, I just had a question. Is this recording going to be, if somebody who didn't make the meeting wanted to see this, could they find this out on the website somewhere to watch this, or rebroadcast of this?
Hi Jennifer, this is Michelle. I can jump in. This video will be posted on the city's YouTube channel. It will also be posted on our Facebook channel, and then we will also post it on the EIR project page for this project.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so not seeing any other comments or any more verbal comments at this time. We will like to thank everyone for submitting your comments tonight. And once again, we have until July 14th for any additional written comments. Thank you, and for everyone to have a good night.